For your entire life, you have likely worn the label of people pleaser with a quiet mix of pride and exhaustion. You saw it as a part of your personality, a testament to your kindness, your generosity, your good heart. You are the one who keeps the peace, the one who avoids conflict, the one who makes sure everyone else is okay. It has become your identity. But we have seen the cost, the resentment, the anxiety, the chronic pain, the slow erasure of the self. And we have arrived at the great central question: why? Why is it so terrifyingly difficult to say no? Why does the thought of disappointing someone feel like a threat to your very survival? The answer is because at one point in your life, it likely was. Today, we are going to explore one of the most transformative concepts in modern psychology, a concept that reframes people-pleasing not as a character flaw or even a bad habit, but as a highly intelligent, deeply ingrained survival strategy, a trauma response. Now, the word trauma can be jarring. We often associate it with major, catastrophic events. But trauma, in its broader, more accurate definition, is anything that overwhelms our capacity to cope, forcing us to disconnect from our authentic selves in order to survive. It can be a loud T trauma, like abuse or neglect, or it can be a quiet T trauma, the chronic experience of not being seen, of having your emotional needs dismissed, of growing up in a home where you had to be the emotional caretaker for your own parents. For a child in that environment, people-pleasing is not a choice. It is a brilliant adaptation. It is a way to stay safe in an unsafe world. And understanding this is the key that unlocks a new level of self-compassion. It is the moment you stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking with profound kindness, "What happened to me?"
To understand why people-pleasing is a trauma response, we must first expand our understanding of the word trauma itself. Our culture often reserves this word for the battlefield, for catastrophic accidents, for acts of overt violence. These are what we might call large T traumas. They are undeniable, visible wounds to the psyche. And they absolutely can create a people-pleasing response as a way to appease a threat. But there is another, far more common and far more insidious form of trauma. It is the world of small t trauma. Small t trauma is not about what happened to you in a single terrifying event. It is about what didn't happen for you, day after day, week after week. It is the chronic absence of something essential for a child's healthy development. It is the slow, quiet erosion of the self. Dr. Gabor Maté, a leading expert on trauma, defines it simply as a wound, a psychic wound that causes a disconnection from our authentic self. This wound is often created in an environment where a child's authentic feelings and needs are not seen, not validated, or are perceived as a threat to the parent's own stability. In this environment, the child faces what we call a developmental dilemma. A child's most fundamental need, even more than food or shelter, is the need for attachment to their caregiver. Their survival depends on it. So when a child's authentic expression, their anger, their sadness, their exuberant joy, their needs, threatens that attachment, they are faced with an impossible choice. Be authentic and risk losing the connection that guarantees my survival? Or abandon my authentic self in order to preserve the connection? For a child, this is not a choice. They will, every single time, choose attachment over authenticity. They will abandon themselves to save the relationship. This act of self-abandonment is the original trauma, and people-pleasing is the lifelong strategy that is born from it. Let's make this real. Let's look at the kinds of environments that create this response. the emotionally unstable home. Consider a child growing up with a parent who suffers from untreated depression or anxiety. Let's call her Jennifer. Her mother is not cruel, she is just fragile. Some days her mother is happy and engaged, on other days she's withdrawn, irritable, and cannot get out of bed. Jennifer, as a small child, cannot understand the complexities of adult mental illness. She only understands that the emotional climate of her home is unpredictable and frightening. She becomes a tiny, highly skilled meteorologist of her mother's moods. She learns to read the subtlest shifts in tone of voice, in facial expression. She learns that her own needs, her own loud play, her own requests for attention can be the thing that makes mommy sad or makes mommy angry. So she learns to be quiet, to be helpful, to be good, to walk on eggshells. She learns to suppress her own inner world to stabilize her outer world. Her people-pleasing is not kindness. It is a sophisticated and exhausting form of emotional regulation. She is regulating her parents' nervous system with her own, because her own safety depends on it. Decades later, as an adult, she finds herself in relationships where she is constantly trying to manage her partner's moods, feeling responsible for their happiness, and feeling terrified of their displeasure. She is still running the old, outdated program. The high-achieving or narcissistic home. Now consider Michael. He grew up in a home where love was conditional. It was tied directly to his achievements. He received praise and affection when he got straight A's, won the soccer game, or played the piano perfectly at the recital. But when he struggled, when he failed, when he was just an ordinary, messy kid, he was met with disappointment, criticism, or emotional withdrawal. The lesson was clear. Your worth is not inherent. It is earned through performance. He learns that the only parts of him that are lovable are the successful parts. His authentic self, with its fears, its vulnerabilities, and its imperfections, is not welcome. It must be hidden. He develops a persona of effortless competence. As an adult, he becomes a workaholic perfectionist. He is the ultimate yes man at work, taking on impossible tasks to prove his worth. His people-pleasing is not generosity. It is a frantic, lifelong performance to earn the love he was never giving freely. He is terrified of failure because in his nervous system, failure equals abandonment. In the enmeshed home, there are no clear boundaries. The child is treated as an extension of the parent. Their purpose is to meet the parent's unmet emotional needs. This is the child who becomes their parent's confidant, their therapist, their best friend. They listen to adult problems they cannot possibly understand. They learn to be the mature one, the responsible one. They are praised for being such an old soul. But they are being robbed of their childhood. This child learns that love means sacrificing their own needs and boundaries for the sake of the other person. As an adult, they are drawn to partners who are projects, people they can fix and care for. Their people-pleasing is not a choice. It is the only way they know how to love. It is a deeply ingrained belief that their needs do not matter, and that true connection requires the complete erasure of the self. In all of these scenarios, the child's nervous system learns a critical lesson. My authentic self is unsafe. My survival depends on my ability to anticipate and meet the needs of others while suppressing my own. This is not a thought. It is a deep, cellular, physiological reality. It is a trauma response frozen in time, lodged in the body. It is why, as an adult, even in a safe environment, the thought of saying no can trigger a primal fear that feels like you are about to die. Your conscious adult brain knows you are safe, but the unconscious child part of your nervous system is still running the old survival program. It is still protecting that small child from the threat of abandonment. Understanding this is the beginning of everything. It moves you out of the prison of shame and self-blame. You are not weak. You are not flawed. You do not lack a backbone. You are a survivor. You developed an incredibly intelligent strategy to survive an environment that was, in some fundamental way, unsafe for your authentic spirit. And now, with this new knowledge, you can begin the compassionate work of teaching that old part of you that the war is over and it is finally safe to come home.
To truly grasp the power of this pattern, we must move beyond psychology and into biology. We must understand how trauma reshapes the nervous system itself. Your nervous system has one primary job: to keep you safe. It is constantly scanning your environment, both internal and external, for cues of safety or danger. When it perceives a threat, it activates a set of ancient, hardwired survival responses. These are often called the 4 F's of trauma: fight, flight, freeze, and a fourth, less discussed response: fawn. Understanding these 4 pathways is essential to understanding the mechanics of people-pleasing. Let's begin with the 2 most well-known: fight and flight. These are active, high-energy responses. Imagine a gazelle on the savanna spotting a lion. Instantly, its nervous system floods with adrenaline. Its heart pounds. It has 2 options. If it feels it can win, it might lower its horns and charge. This is the fight response. It is an act of aggression to neutralize the threat. If it feels it cannot win, it will turn and run for its life. This is the flight response. It is an act of escape to outrun the threat. These are the responses our nervous system is designed for. They involve movement, action, and the powerful discharge of stress hormones. In human terms, the fight response might look like yelling, arguing, or setting a firm boundary. The flight response might look like leaving a toxic relationship, quitting a soul-crushing job, or physically removing yourself from a tense situation. For many people, these responses are available and healthy. But what happens when, as a child, fighting back or running away is not an option? What if the source of the threat is the very person you depend on for survival? You cannot fight your parent. You cannot run away from home. When fight and flight are impossible, the nervous system moves to its next option: freeze. The freeze response is a state of immobilization. Think of the possum playing dead. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed and essentially shuts down to conserve energy and to numb the pain of an inescapable attack. The body becomes rigid. The breath becomes shallow. You might feel disconnected from your body, as if you are watching things happen from a distance. This is called dissociation. It is a profound state of helplessness. In human terms, this can manifest as feeling paralyzed in a confrontation. You want to speak up, but your mind goes blank. Your throat tightens, and you cannot find the words. It can also lead to the depression we spoke of earlier, a long-term state of frozen life force. The freeze response is a last-ditch effort to survive when action is impossible. But there is a 4th pathway, a pathway that is incredibly common, yet only recently has it been given the attention it deserves. It is a pathway that is particularly relevant for those who grew up in environments of emotional rather than physical threat. This is the fawn response. The Fawn response, a term coined by therapist and trauma expert Pete Walker, is the strategy of trying to appease the threat. If you cannot fight it, flee from it, or freeze to endure it, you try to make yourself friends. You try to make yourself so pleasing, so helpful, so attuned to the needs of the attacker that they no longer see you as a target. You preemptively surrender your own needs, boundaries, and authentic self in the hope of gaining safety through service. This is the core, the very engine of the people-pleasing trauma response. Let's revisit our examples. Jennifer, with her emotionally fragile mother, learned the Fawn response. She could not fight her mother's depression or flee from it, so she learned to appease it. She became a good girl, a little caretaker, constantly monitoring her mother's moods and adjusting her own behavior to keep the peace. Her nervous system learned, if I am pleasing, if I am helpful, the source of danger, mom's emotional state, will be neutralized and I will be safe. Michael, in the high-achieving home, also learned the Fawn response. He couldn't fight his parents' expectations, so he appeased them through perfectionism. He learned to fawn over their need for him to be a reflection of their own success. His nervous system learned, if I perform perfectly, if I achieve, the source of danger, their disappointment and withdrawal of love, will be neutralized and I will be safe. The Fawn response is a brilliant and highly sophisticated survival strategy. It requires immense intelligence, empathy, and the ability to read subtle social cues. People pleasers are often the most emotionally intelligent people in the room. They have to be. Their survival once depended on it. Pause and consider this. Your people-pleasing is not a weakness. It is a skill set you developed under duress. You are a master strategist, a diplomat of a war you didn't even know you were fighting. The problem is that this strategy, which was so essential in childhood, becomes a devastating liability in adulthood. You are no longer that helpless child. The threats are no longer the same. But your nervous system is still stuck in the past, running the Fawn program on a loop. It still perceives every potential conflict, every possible disagreement, every hint of someone's displeasure as a life or death threat. So, when your boss asks you to stay late, your nervous system doesn't hear a simple request. It hears a threat, and it automatically defaults to its most practiced survival strategy, Fawn. Yes, of course, anything you need. When your friend asks for a favor you don't have the energy for, your nervous system doesn't register a choice. It registers a threat to the connection. It defaults to Fawn. Absolutely, I'm happy to help. This is why changing your behavior feels so impossibly hard. You are not just trying to break a habit. You are trying to override a deeply ingrained physiological trauma response. You are trying to convince an ancient part of your brain that the lion is no longer at the door. This requires more than willpower. It requires a new kind of work. The work of healing the nervous system itself. The work of creating a sense of deep internal safety so that the Fawn response is no longer your only available option.
We have arrived at the heart of the matter. The understanding that your people-pleasing is not a moral failing, but a physiological trauma response hardwired into your nervous system for survival. This knowledge is profoundly liberating. It moves you from shame to compassion. But it can also feel daunting. If this is a deep biological program, how on earth do you begin to change it? The answer is, you do not start by trying to change the behavior. You do not start by white-knuckling your way through saying no and forcing confrontations. For a dysregulated nervous system, that would be like trying to run a marathon when you have a broken leg. It will only lead to more injury. The healing journey begins in a much quieter, more internal place. It begins with creating safety. Not just external safety, but a deep, felt sense of internal safety. You must, with great patience and kindness, begin to teach the terrified younger part of your nervous system that the war is over, that the threat is gone, that it is finally safe to come out of survival mode. This is not an intellectual exercise, it is a somatic one. It is work you do with your body, not just in your mind. This is the true foundation of healing the people-pleasing trauma response. So, how do we begin to cultivate this inner safety? We start with the language the nervous system understands best, the breath. Your breath is the remote control for your nervous system. When you are in a fawn response, feeling anxious, wanting to please, feeling the pressure to say yes, your breathing becomes shallow, rapid, held high in the chest. This signals danger to your brain. The first practice is to consciously interrupt this pattern. Throughout your day, especially when you feel that familiar urge to please, I invite you to practice somatic sighing. It is incredibly simple. You take a deep inhale through your nose, filling your belly. And then through your mouth, you let out a long, slow, audible sigh like a ha sound. Do this 2 or 3 times. This long, slow exhalation is one of the fastest ways to activate the vagus nerve and switch your nervous system from the sympathetic fight or flight or fawn mode into the parasympathetic rest and digest mode. It sends a powerful nonverbal signal to your brain that says, I am safe right now. The threat has passed. This is not an intellectual exercise. It is a somatic one. It is work you do with your body, not just in your mind. This is the true foundation of healing the people-pleasing trauma response. So, how do we begin to cultivate this inner safety? We start with the language the nervous system understands best, the breath. Your breath is the remote control for your nervous system. When you are in a fawn response, feeling anxious, wanting to please, feeling the pressure to say yes, your breathing becomes shallow, rapid, held high in the chest. This signals danger to your brain. The first practice is to consciously interrupt this pattern. Throughout your day, especially when you feel that familiar urge to please, I invite you to practice somatic sighing. It is incredibly simple. You take a deep inhale through your nose, filling your belly, and then through your mouth, you let out a long, slow, audible sigh like a ha sound. Do this 2 or 3 times. This long, slow exhalation is one of the fastest ways to activate the vagus nerve and switch your nervous system from the sympathetic fight or flight or fawn mode to the parasympathetic rest and digest mode. It sends a powerful, nonverbal signal to your brain that says, I am safe right now. The threat has passed. This is not about fixing the external situation. It is about regulating your internal state first. You cannot make a clear choice when your body is in a state of alarm. The second practice is to create islands of stillness and self-attunement. The fawn response is externally focused. Your antennae are always out, scanning the environment and other people for cues. Healing requires you to gently, consistently bring your attention back home, to yourself. This does not mean an hour of meditation, which can feel impossible at first. It means finding 1 or 2 5-minute windows in your day, perhaps in your car before you walk into the office, or in the bathroom, or just before you go to sleep. In this brief moment, you do one thing. You attune to your own inner world. You close your eyes, you practice your somatic sighing, and you ask that gentle question we've learned. What am I feeling right now? In my body. You are not trying to change the feeling. You are not judging it. You are simply noticing it. There is a tightness in my chest. There's a buzzing feeling in my hands. There is a hollowness in my stomach. You are practicing the skill of self-witnessing. For a nervous system conditioned to believe that its own internal state is irrelevant or dangerous, this simple act of paying attention is a profound act of love. You are telling that exiled child part of you, I see you, I hear you, you matter to me. This builds a foundation of trust with yourself. The third practice involves understanding the concept of the window of tolerance. Think of your nervous system as having a window. Inside the window is your optimal state. You feel calm, connected, and capable of handling life's ups and downs. When a trigger happens, you can get pushed out of the window into hyperarousal, the anxiety and panic of fight or flight, or into hypoarousal, the numbness and collapse of freeze and depression. The fawn response is often a frantic dance on the edge of the window, trying to do whatever it takes to get back into a state of perceived safety. The healing work is not about never getting triggered. It is about gently, patiently widening your window of tolerance. It is about increasing your capacity to feel discomfort without immediately defaulting to a survival response. So, how do you do this? You start with microdosing boundaries. You do not start by saying no to your intimidating boss. That will likely push you way outside your window of tolerance and lead to a shame spiral. You start with something incredibly small, with very low stakes. A barista asks you if you want whipped cream on your coffee. Your automatic fawn response is to say yes, to be agreeable, even if you don't want it. You pause. You take a breath. And you say, no, thank you. That's it. It's a tiny act, but inside your nervous system, it is a huge victory. You have survived saying no. The world did not end. The barista was not angry. You have just given your nervous system a new piece of data. It is safe to have a preference. Or a friend texts you, want to get dinner tonight? Your automatic fawn response is to say yes immediately to secure the connection. Instead, you practice a micro-boundary. You text back, that sounds lovely. Let me check my energy levels when I get home from work and I'll let you know in an hour. You are not saying no. You are simply creating space. You are honoring your own inner state before making a commitment. You are teaching your nervous system that you have a choice. Each of these micro-practices widens your window of tolerance bit by bit. This is the path. It is not a dramatic overnight transformation. It is the slow, compassionate, and deeply respectful work of befriending your own nervous system. It is the work of using your breath, your attention, and tiny, manageable choices to prove to the oldest parts of your brain that you are no longer a helpless child in an unsafe world. You are an adult, capable of creating your own safety from the inside out. And that is the beginning of true freedom.
Today, we have fundamentally reframed the story you tell yourself about your own life. The behavior you have long called people-pleasing, the identity you may have worn as the nice one, has been revealed in a new light. We have seen that it is not a personality flaw you should be ashamed of, but a brilliant survival strategy your younger self developed to navigate an unsafe world. We have looked at the biology of trauma, understanding the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses, and we have named the fawn response as the engine of people-pleasing, the instinct to appease a threat when fighting or fleeing is not an option. And most importantly, we have outlined the first steps of a new path forward, not a path of forcing behavioral change, but a path of cultivating deep internal safety through the body, through the breath, and through the gentle practice of micro-dosing boundaries. This shift in perspective from what is wrong with me to what happens to me
is the single most powerful catalyst for healing. It allows you to finally stop fighting a war against yourself. You can put down the weapons of self-criticism and self-blame. You can begin to look at your people-pleasing patterns not with judgment, but with a profound and tender compassion. You can look at that part of you that is terrified of conflict, that feels compelled to say yes, and instead of hating it for its weakness, you can thank it for its service. You can say to that old, terrified part of your nervous system, "Thank you. Thank you for keeping me safe for all those years. You did an incredible job with the tools you had. But I am an adult now. The situation has changed. I am safe. I can take it from here." This is the dialogue of integration. It is how you begin to heal the original wound of self-abandonment. This is not a quick fix. It is the work of a lifetime. It is the patient, repetitive, and deeply loving act of building a new relationship with yourself. A relationship built on trust, safety, and the radical belief that your needs matter, that your voice deserves to be heard, that your presence on this earth is inherently worthy, with or without the applause of others. As you continue this journey, you will have good days and bad days. There will be moments you successfully hold a boundary and feel empowered. There will be moments you fall back into the old fawn response and feel a wave of shame. This is all part of the process. The key is to meet both the victories and the setbacks with the same gentle compassion. But there is a feeling, a symptom, that we have touched on but not yet fully explored. It is the profound, bone-deep exhaustion that so often accompanies the people-pleasing pattern. The feeling that no matter how much you sleep, you are never truly rested. You might have called it burnout, but what if it is something more? What if this exhaustion is not just a physical state, but a language? A secret language that your suppressed shadow self is using to communicate its profound depletion. A language that says, "I am tired of performing. I am tired of pretending. I am tired of carrying it all." Understanding this exhaustion, this feeling of being just so tired, is a critical key to the next stage of our work. It is the cry of a soul that is ready to stop doing and simply be. And learning to decode that secret language is where our journey takes us next.